Now, to turn everything into a little bit more grounded sphere, I would argue that you are much better off by understanding the form versus understanding the anatomy itself. To illustrate this, I'm showing here an example of work that I did for Blur Studios. This is Love, Death and Robots. I believe this is season 2. I hope there is no copyright infringement. This is on my portfolio, on public portfolio, so the TV show has been released. Well, it was released, I think, a couple of years ago. Nonetheless, I hope everything is fine here. But the reason why I'm showing it this specific model is because if we look at this, it's kind of difficult to tell what kind of anatomy needs to be here in the first place. I mean, if we do understand anatomy, we, on the one hand, we should be able to kind of predict some of the elements. To give you an example, would be, so if we know that there are fingers, right, and if we know anatomy, it means that the fingers need to be well, the bones of the fingers, they need to connect to a muscle so they can move, right? So they can go this direction, they can go this direction, which means that on the forearm there needs to be musculature that support this kind of movement, right? The muscle, the way the muscle works, it contracts, right? So it's kind of long, then it shrinks, it pulls the bone, and that's how we get the rotation, or we get the movement of the bones. So that's, if anything about anatomy that I would sort of recommend knowing, is just the mechanics of a muscle, right? The muscle simply contracts. If this is a bicep, for example, right, it gets shorter, kind of more bulbous, right? And because it has a tendon that connects to a bone, it pulls the bone, and right. And so in this case, if this was the bicep, the forearm, instead of being here, and also the fingers, it will kind of move here, right? This is the fingers. So this is the mechanics of every muscle, right? It's just a vector, kind of muscle is contracting and it's pulling the tendon. So if we understand this kind of mechanic and we know that there are fingers, we should be able to create something in here, even if it's an alien, right? We should be able to create some musculature in here. So there should be some connection to the bones, right? And those are the tendons. So in this sense, yes, understanding anatomy and knowing anatomy definitely helps. I would still argue that you are much better off by creating a believable form versus believable anatomy. So if we dissect everything that is taking place here, it doesn't make I wanted to say it doesn't make any sense, but it can't make any sense because we don't know what this is, right? It might be just something completely alien, which is, it's supposed to be completely alien because this is completely alien, right? And so what I've done here is I've kind of mimicking some of the musculature that I've seen on animals, right? And I would for making this, I would open a reference. I would open an atlas, anatomy atlas of a I don't remember, a tiger or a dog, right? Something that you can find easily on Google for free. It's not like I have a book for those kind of things. You just open it up, and then you copy, right? Those muscles. Yes, it is copying. It's about recreating something believable on a surface or on a creature that is completely outside of anything that you can find on this planet, right? Alien. So here everything is more, it has everything to do with form rather than the anatomy itself. The same goes for this creature, even though it's kind of more simple, but nonetheless it's about that. So none of those things are, well, I don't know what they are, right? I've made them. It looks like a chest muscle, or, you know, pecs maybe, but it's too high up. It's right on the neck. So whatever that is, it's just form, but it is believable, right? There is something about it that makes us hopefully feel that there is structure going on behind the skin, right? This is a living organism. Same goes for those kind of things, right? So this is more kind of anatomically, I wouldn't say correct, because again it just doesn't fit the creature. It doesn't fit the concept to say that anatomy is correct, because this is an alien, right? So those kind of things are taking place in here. So all of this is just made up, right? There's some kind of bones in here, almost like scapulas, something like that, right? There's some muscles or form, something in here. And this creature is just a, well, it's there aren't that many muscles, right? But it's more like a bug or a crab or something like a crustacean. But here everything is just form, right? Everything here is just me creating some kind of shapes, right? And the idea behind this, or not the idea, but the goal behind this, is to make sure that everything is clicking, everything is connecting nicely, that nothing is really standing out, right? Everything is kind of merging into something that is believable, organic looking. And so if you enjoy this content or find it useful, please consider supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee via the link in the description. So we would approach everything that has to do with organic form, right? Would be whether it's a creature, whether it's an animal, whether this is a 3D character. To me, it's more important that the form, the aesthetics is working better than anatomy itself, right? It doesn't mean have ever that we can just make things up, right? I mean, especially if we're making a human character, it doesn't mean that there should be 2 biceps or there should be 4 legs. What I'm saying is that at the end of the day, nobody will be judging you on the basis of your knowledge of anatomy. Everything that you will be doing in the studio environment, everything that you will be doing in the industry, is going to be judged by just how good looking the asset really is, right? Nobody will come to you and ask you about musculature. Nobody will come and start speaking to you in Latin, so you can point them out where a certain muscle is, right? Nobody is going to be doing any of those kind of things. Not even in my experience, I've never had any conversation with any character artist about musculature in such a sense that we would, exchange Latin words. So it's definitely a little bit more simpler when it comes to for execution, when it comes to doing the actual work in the studio, right? I would argue, as I keep repeating, that it's more about the form than it is about anatomy. And in some sense, this is a shortcut, because you don't need to study anatomy in such a depth that we are, in some sense, being led to believe, right? Because to me, the way I kind of see it is that if there are schools, if there are academies teaching video game art or teaching film art, I know that there are classes for anatomy. And to me, the anatomy classes in those kind of schools, they're almost meaningless, because to say it one more time, we in video games or in film, in the industry, we're not sculptors, we are 3D character or creature artists. It's a completely different thing altogether. It's not being a sculptor, it's about being a craftsman or craftswoman, in definitely more than being an artist, a pure artist. And for it's just to kind of go back to to ancient Egypt, this is how it was done, right? There were also academies in there. There were also, well, they weren't called academies, but they were special places where the sculptors would be taught how to produce sculptures, right? But because the sculptures had a specific way of being, right? There is a specific way that the sculpture needed to look. They needed to follow specific rules, specific guides. So even though throughout the time. Aesthetically, some of the things were changing, of course, but most of it stayed the same. The foundation was always the same, right? Not just the poses, whether it's standing or sitting, it's the execution of certain elements, right? The knees, the bones in here, some of the muscles in here, the spread out fingers or the toes, the shape of the pecs, the kind of the abdomen area. So all of those things, right? They are looking more or less the same, and this is what was taught in those environments. I mean, at least as far as I can gather, right? We can't be 100% sure, but it wouldn't pay off to teach somebody what the muscle would look like if the arm was going this way, because it was never supposed to go in those directions. The arms would always be either this or either this, and that's it. There is nothing more than that. There is not a single official royal sculpture in ancient Egypt that would do anything other than this. I mean, there are some poses where the arms are going kind of against the waist. There are some examples where the arm would go this way, right? But those are, if we count, there would be probably 5 variations of the position of the arm, and all of those variations would be studied and they would be taught, right? In our case, working in video games and film, there is no point in studying all of those things, all of the dynamism of the poses, if the end goal is to create a character that would look always like this, right? Always either this or those are the arms, right? Or that. So what's the point of making something like this? What's the point of teaching anatomy to such a degree where nothing of this will be useful? Nothing of this will be applicable to any job that you do in the industry, right? When it comes to, for example, in this case, for a human being, right? If we're creating a 3D character. So, as I said, it's way better to stay focused, right? To kind of understand what your task at hand is, like what exactly are you going to be doing, and focus on the areas that are more important. And to me, as I repeat, it's about the form, it's about the shapes, and it's about proportions and the way you can execute it really well. It's not about the anatomy itself. And here just a very interesting thing that I found. So to kind of illustrate that everything was following rules when it comes to execution of the sculptures in ancient Egypt. Everything was traced, right? I mean, it was measured perfectly, even though this is fresco or relief. Everything would be measured, but the same was done for sculptures as well. It would be a block of whatever material that they would be using. My goodness, what is this? But they would trace it like that, right? So if the face was somewhere here, they would trace it, and they would do this kind of tracing as well. So the face would be here, right? And then they will chisel all of those things out, right? All of the sculptures from a block of whatever the material that they were using. So it was all measured. It was all following the same canons, the same rules. And what we are doing now, it's not different. I mean, in the industry, we are still following rules and canons, right? And it's a good thing to understand that there are rules, in fact. And so for kind of studying form, I would definitely recommend looking up this artist, Carlos Huente. So for sure, I would say that he is one of the best, if not the best, contemporary. I wouldn't say artist, contemporary. Well, okay, let's not use contemporary. He's the best artist working in the industries, right? He's in film mostly, but I think he's also in video games, but probably mostly film. And so when it comes to form, I don't think that there's anybody who's better than Carlos Huente. And I would just either buy his books, he has a couple of them, or just Google him on Instagram, or Google him or find him on Instagram, and then just do research, check everything that he does, because his form is absolutely on another level. He himself, I took his class. He, as far as I can remember, he claimed that he didn't know anatomy. So that's another good kind of backup to my arguments. I mean, it's more about form. Even though he's a concept artist, he's doing more design work than kind of functional work. I mean, design is function first of all, but I mean, he is more about creating this kind of aesthetics, right? Something that is just striking, and he is using form to create that. And so he worked on Alien, and here it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful surface, right? Some of those things, it's wonderful to study. You can just kind of spend hours, right, dissecting some of the things. And it's also a good idea to maybe even create some of his works in 3D. That will definitely help out with execution of the form, right? Execution of the surface of whatever asset that we are working on.